Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jamie.
Okay. I was trying to play the music, but I didn't think it was going to play from my screen, so I think I have to put it on the slide. Sorry. Can you hear it now?
Not yet. It looks like it may be spinning.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it yet. Can you hear it from my side?
I can hear it.
Good morning, Jan. How are you? We're going to have to really just test to see if other people can hear us. All right.
Yeah.
If they have new computers or something about docking it that they won't be able to hear.
Okay.
Jen, can you hear me talk?
I can now. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you just can't hear the music, but you can hear us speaking, right?
Correct.
Okay, well, we can get rid of that music. Let us.
Do you hear music now, Candy?
No,
Okay. I turned it off because I didn't think it was working.
yeah.
That's all right.
We're trying to figure this all out, so.
This is not a technology session. It's not what I signed up for.
That's why we're all here.
Yeah.
Sharon Bader, are you with us this morning? Maybe, maybe not. I'm checking really quick, Jamie, just to see if people can mute and unmute themselves.
Yeah. And can hear us too.
Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
can hear you, Sharon. Yeah.
I'm here.
When
Yay.
And I'm so excited. I'm smiling really big. You just can't see it.
Well, what is great is that we really are trying to figure out when someone else, assigns the breakout room or the WebEx, we're not quite sure what capabilities we're going to have. So thanks for being patient with us
Yes.
this morning as we try to figure out what you can do and what we need to help you figure out what to do.
I did have to unplug my computer from the dock so you could hear me though,
Okay,
Oh,
that
okay.
is good to know.
because
That's good to
otherwise the
know.
mic won't work.
That's interesting. Candy, it's 8 o'clock. Do you want us to start or do you want us to wait a couple minutes?
Okay, so we have, let's see, a total of 46
Mhm.
in here. I'm sorry, scheduled, right? Registered.
Right.
And we're up to about 28. So
Okay.
maybe
Give them a few minutes.
more minutes. Yep.
Yeah. People are figuring out the tech and stuff. People who are here, if you'll read my slides, everybody can see my screen, right? Candy, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Great. So this is my rock. We're not going to talk about them, but if you, well, before we get started, want to ball up your paper and just like have it ready. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to hold it in my right hand. Cool. Jamber, and I see your rock.
We're getting closer, Jamie. We're up to 36. I'm sure
Natalie,
that's
will you talk so I can see if
Can
I
you
can
hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
I'm just like
I
testing
was talking
random.
earlier, but I was muted. I thought
No, I
you all could
appreciate
hear
it.
me.
I'm just like testing random people. Thank you.
I have a rock.
Hey, I can count on you to participate. Thank you.
That's right.
And I've also placed in the chat that tiny URL so that they could just click that link and also open up
Like the attachments.
the presentation. Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Okay, Jamie, we are up to 40.
Ready to go?
Yeah, I think we can just kind of lay out some really quick. If you have any questions or comments, please place them in the chat. Make sure it says to everyone. I will be kind of acting as Jamie's moderator. So I'll try to keep up with those questions and look for those opportunities to maybe ask Jamie some of those questions or share some of the comments that you're making. And I will continue to place that tiny URL so that you can actually access the slides, because I do know that Jamie plans on having us do some other things that are linked within her slide presentation. So I will keep doing that to make sure everyone has access to it. You do have the ability to mute and unmute yourself. So when she's asking for some participation, you have the ability to do that. If you're having any problems hearing us, one of the things that another participant just shared with us is that they had to undock in order to really hear. So that might be something, but let us know if you have any problems. We'll try to help you problem solve. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Candy. I really appreciate you taking over kind of some of the tech issues, because I am not the person to solve that. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming.
You did.
And even from the comfort of your own room in a lot of cases, which is lovely. I'm Jamie O'Connor. I know a lot of you, but if you don't know me, I teach ELA at West High. And I'm really excited to share with all of you this morning and to talk. I was really excited to be one of the first presenters. You know what I mean? Like, it's really good to go when we first get here. So like Candy said, or if you're just joining, if you would click on the tiny URL that Candy put in the chat. So it's going to pull up the presentation that I have shared with you from my screen here. Just having that open so that whenever I ask us to do some interactive activities, you can click on the links as you need to. There's also some links out to some great practical activities you can use for your students later. So there's a lot of good stuff in there that we can use later on or that you can come back to. There's our email addresses on the screen. There's also a QR code. So if you want to pull the presentation up on your phone, you could scan that too if you wanted to. And then I put a little bit of instruction on here for us this morning, just to take a piece of computer paper or whatever's easy for you. If you have something small you can grab and just hold in your hand instead of a piece of balled up paper, that's also fine. I'm right-handed, so I'm holding my rock in my dominant hand. It's going to make it a little bit challenging for me. I might need to click with my left hand or do some writing with my left hand, which might make it a little bit difficult for me, but that's actually going to serve our purpose. So I'm just going to not say anything else about it for a little while, just hold it in my hand, and you can kind of, if you forget and put yours down, you can look at me and remember that my model is that I'm holding it and it's impeding me maybe from doing a couple things more easily. So our presentation is called Rethinking Rocks and Relationships. So obviously, if we're thinking about relationships in communities, obviously there's definitely some philosophical ideas connected with our presentation this morning, which I think is great for the first one coming back at the beginning of the school year, thinking about how we can build communities within our classrooms. But as I briefly mentioned before, there are some very practical ideas here that you could take and do first day with your students, or that you could use throughout the school year, just to make sure that we are, talking to kids, that they're able to do things that are maybe sometimes curricular, but maybe sometimes non-curricular, so that they are able to build relationships together. So we're using the symbol of a rock today to kind of think about how we can get at some of those ideas. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and get started. So again, I'm Jamie and Candy is doing our moderating. If you need anything from us, I'm going to click here. Yay, okay. So I'm going to open today with just a little scenario. So while I read this out loud, you can just think in your head kind of what you would see going on, what you would visualize if this was happening. So the scenario says, imagine that an airplane makes an emergency landing and it breaks up into 3 parts. So this is disaster situation. As the cabin fills with smoke, everyone inside realizes we've got to get out of here. So what's happening? So maybe just taking a moment, I would even maybe close my eyes and think about what am I seeing? What's happening? How are people reacting? What kinds of things am I hearing if I'm in this situation? Okay, so I'm gonna think for a sec. And then we have kind of 2 options here. What planet do you all think that we live on? So maybe thinking in your head as I read these 2 options, were you more imagining planet A? In planet A, the passengers turn to their neighbors and ask if they're okay. Those needing assistance are helped out of the plane first. people are willing to risk their lives, even if they're somebody they've never met before. On planet B, everyone's left to fend for themselves. We have panic, there's pushing, there's shoving. People are pushed out of the way. It doesn't matter if you're a child or an old person. I don't care. I'm getting out, right? I'm getting out of here. So Candy's moderating our chat. So maybe just take a moment and put in the chat real quick, just A or B. What were you envisioning more? Were you envisioning a planet A situation or a planet B? And lots of answers. I love how they pop up at the top of my screen. I didn't know they were going to do that. So I'm like seeing like flashing like B, 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 A, B, B, B. Cool. Nice. Are you guys able to see people's responses as well? Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of differences, which I was kind of expecting because you guys probably have some ideas. You were anticipating what I was going to talk about. But just some interesting tie to this. So this is a quote from a professor of social psychology in the Netherlands. And his research says that about 97% of people, if you ask them this scenario, believe that we live on planet B, that we're in that panic situation. People are pushing each other out of the way. This is probably an old reference, but like, you remember that episode of Seinfeld, like George threw the kid out of the way, like to get out of the so a lot of people like think like that's where we live. But Posma said actually that the truth is, if we do the research, in almost every case, we actually live on planet A. So I thought that that would be a good way to start like thinking about our relationships today, because a lot of people, you know, maybe kids come into the classroom, or maybe we even come into the classroom at the beginning of the school year, and we maybe have some assumptions that are more cynical than it is actual reality. I know at the beginning of school year last year, I was feeling nervous. You know, we didn't have a lot to go off of, like, is this going to work? I don't know what's happening, right? But things kind of worked out okay in a lot of ways. So I think that my assumptions and the reality of the situation maybe didn't come together fully there. So I think if we start from a place of maybe I'm not going to make any assumptions, or maybe I'll be open to my assumptions not always being correct, or maybe even making some more positive assumptions, can maybe start our relationships out this year. I think for me, I really had to like remind myself that happened last year, look back at my journals to remember that, you know, I'm going to start this year in a more positive way, and thinking about that, like the research says we do live on planet A. So like, let's go in with that understanding. This scenario came from a book that Candy recommended to me. I read over the summer. I think I read it in a week. It's amazing. It's just a nonfiction book. It came out in 2019. So this is pre-pandemic, but I think that Bregman probably is writing about the pandemic based on what he wrote about. So if we look at lots of situations historically, things like the Blitzkrieg. So like whenever the Blitz was happening in Britain, you know, even Winston Churchill was like, people are going to panic. This is going to be awful. Like they put up temporary hospitals for people they thought were going to have panic attacks and stuff. And like, not a lot went wrong. I mean, obviously some tragedy happened, but people mostly when they interviewed them were like, it's going okay. Like people are being nice to each other. We're actually helping each other out more than normal. So I think what a lot of his research proves is that even whenever things seem really bad, even whenever it's like, this is a horrible situation, or this is really difficult to teach in a pandemic, people surprise us, and that they actually, you know, there's a lot of good reaction. Same thing with the Titanic. You know, a lot of people say like, oh, people threw each other off of boats, but actually there's a lot of witnesses statements that say that a lot of people helped each other. Of course, we know those stories of 9/11 where people rushed into the building to help, right? Those wonderful things. There's some stories about combat, like they did a lot of research and found that there's all these like Civil War muskets that they found from places like Gettysburg, where people had, you know, loaded their weapons a multitudinous number of times, as opposed to actually wanting to shoot another person. So people surprise us, right? And we can say things like I even teach in English too, the Stanford Prison Experiment and the Milgram Experiment. And it's like, oh, people are terrible to each other, right? When they're put in these situations. But if you look at the research, actually, those people were kind of pushed into those situations. They were guided more than their natural impetus, right? So, and then he also talked about some things like non-traditional schools, where kids were encouraged, you know, to work with groups. They were asked, you know, what are you interested in? What do you want to study? So they were given choice, and that really helped them build some community. So I thought that that would be, you know, helpful things to think about. So this was kind of like what I wanted to think about. Like when I thought about this session, like what did I want the kind of my goal, my mindset to be? So I wrote down that this school year needs to be about meeting students where they are, trusting them to be decent human beings, as well as my peers, my colleagues, right? And developing relationships in our classrooms. So that's what I really kind of wanted my kind of goal statement for this to be. So I am going to ask you to do some stuff. And since I'm an English teacher, like, of course, I'm going to ask you to annotate a poem, right? Like, what a great way to start the school year. So today we're going to read a poem called Inukshuk, and it's written by Jerry Teralt, she's a Canadian poet. This poem is from 2018, so fairly recent. If you guys will go ahead and you can, I think, escape out of my shared screen and go over to your copy of my presentation, you should be able to click here where it says make a digital copy. And it should prompt you, it should say like, oh, make a copy of this. If it doesn't work, let us know. I don't know how many times last year I would try to send something out to my students through Canvas and they'd be like, Miss O'Connor, this is not working. Abby Hall, thank you so much for telling me it works. That's so great. She's like my star student, right? Like, Miss O'Connor, it's working. Okay, so go ahead and make a digital copy of the poem. And I'm going to pull up my copy up here so you can see what yours is supposed to look like. So yours should look like this. Everybody, can I get a thumbs up if yours looks like this? Yeah. So you made your own copy, so you can write, you can do whatever you want on this because it's yours. No one else is going to see what you're writing, okay? So this poem was posted on Maine Public Radio. I added this image over here that was connected to the poem. So if we look at it, I think it should tie us in with what we're talking about. But you could, like, if I was going to make some observations about this picture, which I might start with if I was doing this poem with my students, I might think about like the fact that there's rocks here, right? I see rocks, there's natural material, but they're built into the figure of what looks like what?
Man.
A man, thanks, Jan. Yeah, so it looks like a person, right? The rocks are formed to look like a person. And then in the background, I see kind of this very, very impressive kind of landscape. I would assume that like with that background, I would see somebody's like Facebook profile picture, right? Like I climbed this mountain, check it out. So a really impressive landscape. Maybe this person conquered and climbed that mountain, right? So some really impressive like feats of humanity paired with like this person who is obviously man-made, right? Like somebody built this to look like a person. So I see this connection between rock and human here and like human feats of strength, right? Okay, so I have a couple like background paragraphs here. So I would encourage my students maybe to take a look at these and maybe highlight some things that stand out to them while I'm looking at it with them. The first paragraph introduces the title of the poem and the author. It gives a little bit of her background. It looks like she's a teacher. She's a published author. So I know that she probably has some ethos here. So I feel good about reading this piece. Miss O'Connor didn't just pull it off of some random Twitter or something, okay? She tells us in the second paragraph why she wrote this poem, and it's in response to a piece of art. So I find that that's also a good thing to do with my students too. If I'm not sure like how to get them thinking about an idea, like I might pull up a painting or a sculpture or something to be like, what do you observe here? What can we take away? Kind of like I did with the photo. So in the presentation, I added a photo of this sculpture. So this is Celeste Roberge's Rising Cairn. And the word cairn just basically means a man-made pile of stones. If you ever do any hiking, you might see these like at the tops of mountains, people pile up rocks. So they're formed in different ways, right? We saw that one look like a person. Here's one that looks like a person, but Roberge obviously interpreted it a little bit differently. This person, it's called Rising Cairn, so I'm assuming this person is kind of standing up, but it's a very fluid kind of real looking person. So this is the sculpture that Teralt is writing her poem in response to. So that's kind of nice that I can see what her inspiration was. And she describes it as a life-size human-shaped metal cage filled with smooth granite stones and a kneeling figure. So that gives us some idea about where her inspiration is coming from, which will be helpful to us because we're going to use her poem as inspiration as well. So it's kind of art imitating art, right? Then she talks about some images that she connected, that she thought of whenever she looked at this sculpture. So I really like that idea because I often also ask my students if I want to get them thinking about an idea to do like some word association or smell association or image association. Like sometimes I've like had students, like I might flash like fried chicken, write down what the first thing that comes to mind, right? So here she's saying, okay, I see rising Karen. I'm thinking of Virginia Woolf putting those stones into her pocket and walking into the river. I'm thinking of Sisyphus pushing his boulder uphill for eternity. I'm thinking of this man I saw on a walk on a beach in Portland. So I thought that that was also a good reminder that like students bring experience to the table, right? We don't have to give them a ton of content. We give them some content and they have stuff to bring as well. So that really helps with adding to our community, because I think a lot of our students often think like, I'm a young person, you know, nothing crazy awesome has happened to me in my life. You know, I haven't lived through anything, you know, that would be maybe written about in books or seen in movies, but they do have these experiences, not only through their reading, their watching, but also their personal lived experience that they can bring to the table and that can better all of us in our community. And then she goes on to talk to us about the title of the poem, the word Inukshuk, which is an Inuit word meaning to act in the capacity of a human. So that's what that sculpture we saw, the picture at the top, is a person, right? A man-made person made out of rocks, okay? And she says that that sculpture that we saw captures the everyday heroism and the purely act of rising and not sinking. The idea that we have these stones, we have these rocks that often we might say, it's holding us down, it's weighing us down. But here, Tiralt saw it as maybe we can use them to lift us up. So we're going to take a look at the poem. And I'm just going to ask you while I'm doing this first read through, maybe just highlight some lines or some words that stand out to you. If you want, like if you have a piece of paper, you can write things down. You don't have to, you know, do your highlighting or note taking on the doc. But if you prefer, you can do that, whatever way works best for you. So we're going to take a look, just do a first read through of the poem and see kind of what stands out to us, what connects with us, okay? So again, the poem is called Inukshuk and it's by Jerry Tiralt. It says, the stones piled variously on the thin beach near my favorite walking path fall when the tide turns and collect in the crook of that place, prepared for stillness. The water beats them smooth and makes a kind of music. Grief's innumerable chuffs and sighs. The woman kneeling does not put the stones into her pocket, but swallows them. Each stone remembered by the tongue tastes clay and silt, cliff edge and crag, until her body holds the balance between weight and right, like the low tide man hefting stone in his well-muscled arms, smileless, stone-worthy. Another swallower, he cairns and stoops. He does not look at me even when I speak. I too remember each fist-sized bruise, each rain-wise stone, tuned to the illumined lullaby of loss. We swallow what gathers clamoring. We sink a bit more each day, stone anchored. She says she's rising, not sinking. In another telling, she carries stones one by one uphill. Some say the carrying goes on forever. So this was just a first read through, again, maybe lines or images that we connected with. So now we're going to go, I'm going to put you guys into some breakout groups and we're going to, we're going to do a couple of things. So when you get into your group, it'll be about 5 to 6 people. The directions say that once everyone is in your group, you're going to determine whose birthday is next on the calendar. That person is going to speak first. Then we're going to continue through the calendar year, about 1 minute per person. You're going to introduce yourself. You're going to say, this is my name. This is the building I work in, maybe the discipline, a fun fact if you want to share something. I want you to share a line from the poem that stood out to you and maybe why, if you know, or just, this stood out to me and I'm not sure why, that's also fine. And then maybe what do you wonder or question about the poem or activity, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put us into our breakout groups. And I'm going to be just kind of stopping into each group just to see how we're doing. And if you guys have questions or anything, Candy or I can answer those for you, okay?
And Jamie, when you have those random groups, make sure that Jen Woodward also goes to one of those. You can just add her to one of those single breakout rooms, okay?
Thank you.
right, breakout session 1 has 6 out of 6. It looks like there's a couple people that still are waiting to join session 2, as well as session 5. So they should receive a invitation to join.
Yeah, it should be like a pop-up, right?
Mm-hmm. If you're having any trouble, let us know. Faith, have you received an invitation?
Did it say she's not here?
Yeah. There she goes. Magdalena, did you receive an invitation? Magdalena, did you receive an invitation?
It looks like she's an 8.
Okay, so maybe she's just,
Yeah, maybe she signed in and she had to sign in a different way or something.
and Kayla, what about you?
Candy, I forgot to start the timer, so I'm just gonna wait till 8:30 because that'll be.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Out of curiosity, did
Yeah.
you hit the record button before we started?
No, but it started recording immediately, like it is recording.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure. I was looking for it for you.
Yeah. I tested it out this morning and went into this and it said is going to start recording immediately.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna join.
Do you see this little red button right here?
No, I can't see it. So you're
Oh.
good. Yeah, as long as you
Yeah.
see, apparently
Yeah.
the one who has control of, like, I'm a co-host, you're the host, so you have.
Yeah, it says recording is in process.
Okay. So I'm gonna try to pop into some of the odd
Okay.
sessions, okay?
I will too.
You-
Do you want to do 1 through 4 and then I'll do 5 through 8?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'll work.
Thanks. Candy. I'm gonna, when I do the end, it gives them a minute countdown. So I'm
Yes.
gonna go ahead and do that, okay?
Okie dokie. What was wonderful is they were having great discussions.
They were. Some of them were really talking about the words, and other people were talking about their experiences in national parks, like seeing the stone stack.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, and it was interesting how many people that I caught talking about when she says, you know, like the swallowing yet I rise. Do you know what I mean? And wondering what it was about.
Yeah. Thank you for doing all the tech stuff. I feel like I'd be really overwhelmed if I had to do like the attendance and all that stuff too.
I was going to say, I really appreciate how you just kind of like, because I've been, sometimes when I close my video or I go on mute, I'm also addressing anyone else that's having problems in any other session. So I appreciate you.
Oh, I'm sure you are. Your name is like on every, like somehow you're hosting every session, like at the same time.
It's all good. It is all good.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Candy and I were just like kind of debriefing real quickly about all the great conversations we had heard. Such like a nice variety of like some people talking about, in some cases, some of the similar images of her like swallowing the stones, but also rising. But then some other people were talking about their own personal experiences of, you know, seeing stone stacked like this, you know, when they've been to parks and stuff. So I think a nice variety of stuff to talk about. So awesome. Thank you for participating. And some people were doing the chat and some people were talking. So it's great. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to go back to great. Awesome. This was something Candy found on Twitter. So I think you guys maybe have in your group, I asked you to, you know, find out the birthday of the next person on the calendar, and that person would start. I find that those kinds of things are really great if you're having kids talk to each other. You know, they might spend a minute or two just talking like, who wants to talk first? Like, you know what I mean? Or like kids might not even want to talk. It's easy to not participate if you don't have like the drive to do that. So these kinds of things can sometimes help. So Candy found this post on Twitter, which I thought was really great. So if you have this open, you can click on this image. It'll take you to the Twitter post where this person had a lot of great ideas about how to get kids to start that conversation. You know, it's really easy to say like, my birthday is August 24th or whatever. And then, you know, they're obviously the first one to start. There's really no arguing that has to happen. It's just the, you know, the next obvious thing that happens. So those are nice ways to get kids to start conversations as well. Oh, I clicked on it. There you go. Bar at the top. Okay, awesome. Okay, so if you've been following directions, you've been holding this piece of paper or an object or something for a while now in your dominant hand, which can really be difficult, right? And we've been talking about rocks and, you know, we've been trying to annotate a poem, which to some of you is like, I don't even know what I'm doing anyway, because I'm not an ELA person. And now you've got my hand taking up time. So let's think about what maybe we're trying to do here. I think a lot of you, and even in your conversations, we're starting to pick up on why we were doing this. And you can click here for a hint on Twitter if we can think about why we are all pretending to hold rocks. So does anybody maybe want to put something in the chat? Maybe Candy can look, or just say out loud, like, what do you think we're doing with holding these rocks in our hands? Why do we ask you to do this maybe? I like what Chad said in the chat. They're with you constantly. Absolutely. Yes, they are. And we have the luxury of like, I physically can put this down, but can't always do that. I love faith. Everyone has their burdens. I love the idea of rock as burden. Struggles we carry. Thank you, Natalie. Absolutely.
Oh, I like that. Elizabeth said we all,
Yes.
even the students.
I've got rocks. My students have rocks. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I like that.
I like what
Jamie,
mine-
I'm gonna
so-
I'm gonna pop in and say mine out loud because I can't type while I'm holding this. It's very it's very difficult for me to type with it. Some things I've been doing today, I'm left-handed, but my computer mice are always on the right side. So
Mm.
I've been navigating the computer and the screens no problem with my mouse on my right hand because that's what I usually do. And it like sometimes I even kind of forgot that I was holding it. And then I go to type and it's clearly something that's there. So sometimes we have those burdens, but we completely forget about them or they're not a problem until something comes up. And then it's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can imagine like if I was like not an English person and somebody was like, hey, do this, and also like be encumbered by this other thing at the same time. I don't know. I mean, I could see like wanting to shut down, like not even knowing what to do, and now you're telling me I have to talk to other people about this. Like that's a lot to ask. So obviously, what we're thinking about with these rocks is the idea that I like the burden, struggles, these kinds of things that the rock is representing. I think is absolutely, you guys were 100% on with that. So I thought we'd just take a moment, and I have a piece of paper I can write on. You can just pull up a Google Doc or like pull out a poster or something, maybe just writing down real quickly. And since we know what the rocks are, feel free to like keep your rock, and I'm going to try to write with my left hand. Or if you feel like that's too much, since we kind of know what the rocks are, if you want to put it down, maybe you could look at it even while you're writing. Maybe some things you could jot down real quickly. What's it like to carry the rock, especially if you didn't feel comfortable sharing through the chat or talking out loud? What was it like to not talk about the rock, right? Like some of us in our groups, I didn't hear anybody mention it. So like Lynn was maybe like trying to get around and she was thinking about it, but she couldn't say it out loud to her group, right? So that was just like another thing on her mind, especially when you're expected to complete work that makes the rock difficult. What are some of the things that are your rocks? And then maybe thinking about the feelings or thoughts to the poem we just read connected with this idea. So I'm just going to give us maybe a minute to jot down some ideas in response to one or all of these questions. So some of us are finishing up. Again, maybe if you want to put something in the chat or you want to speak out loud, like any responses to any of these questions, what are you guys thinking about when you were writing? I like what Nicole put in the chat. She said, I could connect the rock. I was starting to think about like what the rock meant when we were writing about the poem, but I couldn't say it. So like imagine like in my English classroom, for example, dealing with a text that like hits home for me, but I don't feel like I can share that or bring that to the table. Like that might make it even more difficult. You know what I mean? Like I like to think, that really made me think for a second, Nicole. Like I feel like, oh, this text could connect to this kid. That's going to help them. But maybe sometimes it makes it more difficult. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I can't share that and it's more of a burden. Steve said some people are good at carrying rocks. Some people just figure out how to do it. Yeah, that's like a coping strategy. Some people know how to do it and some people don't, right? Like the idea, like some of our kids come in with like social skills or the ability to carry these rocks and maybe to have a fine day with it, and then other kids maybe not so much. I wrote down some of like examples of some of my rocks. I wrote like, anxiety about medical issues. I have to think about like that, like, do I come in every day? I'm like, is my throat sore? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Do I come to school? Is that okay? And then I'm trying to teach at the same time. So there's lots of things for me that like I'm taking into the classroom as well. Oh, Sharon wrote down looking foolish or being self-conscious. Absolutely. It became a rock for me on Friday that Candy called me and said, hey, this PD is going to be virtual, and that's not comfortable to me. But I thank all of you so much for like supporting me, but like that definitely was just like another rock that I felt like I had to deal with as well. So I think we all kind of have those things, and the kids do too, right? So great. Okay. So I thought we'd do, like, a lot of us probably use Jamboard. So you can click on the Jamboard through this link here on your copy if you'd like. Boards 1 and 2 are the same. I just wanted to make sure we had enough space to add like a post-it for that. Maybe thinking about what rocks our students carry. Do you know of things that our students are carrying that we should think about? And what kinds of things can we not do with our students' rocks? Like what is inhibiting to us, or what can we maybe think about that like we would like to do but can't? Okay, so I'm going to go over to the Jamboard and we can, so if you haven't used a Jamboard before, when you click on it, you should be able to click this little post-it icon and you can write something down. Like what kind of rocks do our students carry? Maybe there's some, test-related stress could be a rock for one of my students. I've heard a lot of them express that before. I'm going to click save. And it's going to pop up. And the one thing about these Jamboards is that they tend to pile up here. So if you just, whenever you make one, if you'll just kind of move yours off to its own spot. And again, board 2 is the same thing. So if you feel more comfortable going onto a new blank space, or you don't feel like you have the space, you can go there as well. And then you can just take a look also at what some other people are putting down. Yeah. I already see, I love pointing out to my students when we do Jamboards, like about consistent answers, like fitting in, I already see like has kind of a trend here. So that makes me feel good that like other people are thinking the same thing I am. That kind of validates my idea. I see a lot of things about expectations. Good. Yeah. And then if anybody wants to go ahead and maybe think about answering the second question too. Oh, this person started to, and post-it note blue here. We can't take away those struggles, absolutely, but we can be there for them to listen and understand, absolutely. Yeah. Ooh, sleep. I forget sometimes that like being a teenager, like even though you sleep so much sometimes, like it still never feels like enough. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love this is so me. I love the person that's like lining them up down here. That's so what I would do. But then there's other people that are like, I'm gonna put mine up here. Mine's gonna be a different size. I love the variety. It's so great. Awesome, really good ideas. So feel free to continue contributing. I'm just gonna keep us going here. Okay. So I was thinking like, what can we do with students' rocks, right? I love the person that said like, we can't carry them for them. We can't hold them for them. But we can think about the fact that rocks don't always have to weigh us down, right? I like how the speaker in the poem swallowed her rocks and then rose with them, right? The idea that like we can use them to build. And I really wanted the word build in the title of our presentation because I think that like, I wanted to think about that, right? Like, and modeling how to work together to lessen the burden or build with our rocks. So I have 2 pictures here. One of them on the right looks really similar to the one that I linked with the poem. And this one on the right, I got from Google Images, and I was like, oh, again, that's so beautiful, right? Like this human form in the background, like that's what I want, right? Like that's the ideal. We can build and we can make this person that overcomes obstacles. And I had to find this as a Google image though, because that's not always reality. Whereas this photo, my father-in-law is a big hiker and he took this picture on the Colorado Trail a couple months ago. And he got to this point in the trail and he had to turn around and come back because he's like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get past all the rocks. He's had like 3 knee replacements. He's like, I recognized that I couldn't do it that day. Like, of course, we want to be able to walk over those rocks every day and to build this. It's not always possible, but I want us to keep in mind that like it is possible sometimes and that we can do it. And if he was by himself, right? So if there were more people with him that day, I feel like maybe we could get here. Candy wrote something in the chat about unpacking rocks. Did you get that from the Jamboard, Candy?
Yes, it was on the second one, but I love the way that they said it helps students learn to unpack their rocks and show them, but we can't unpack their rocks for them. I love that.
I like the idea of modeling that. I think that that's really nice. Thank you. And I love how like somebody had this amazing idea and then put it on the second board. Like, I'm going to hide on the second board, but I'm really going to have this really good idea. So I should have spent more time on the second board. Thank you. Rachel, I don't know Rachel. Rachel Finley said a beautiful mess. Oh my gosh, I love that phrase so much. A beautiful mess. So I put in here and I linked some ideas that we could think about. So I like the idea of like creating with our hands, and I felt a little bit impeded by that this past year, just because like I would do team building stuff with my kids where we were doing things with our hands, and it's less possible now where we're not sitting in groups, but I think it's still something that we can do and have a shared experience. A friend of mine who's a elementary school counselor makes worry stones with her kids. So I linked where, you could do something like that. I've done bookmarks with my kids before, which you can totally do independently at your own desk, but like we're all doing the same thing. I've done some collaborative art, even in my English classroom, where I like took a big picture related to the act we were reading in Macbeth and like cut it up into enough pieces for my kids. And like we had to put it together like a puzzle. So we were building that, you know what I mean? There's some other beginning of the year activities linked here that I found on Edutopia that I thought were really nice, some of which I used last year, which might be good for you. And I actually, I had a little impromptu meeting with my English 2 PLC yesterday, and several people were like, how do we do team building right now, right? Like it's really hard to think about whenever we can't sit in groups. So I think there are some good ideas out there. We just like discussing a piece of writing like we were just doing. So that could be something based on your discipline, like having a discussion about what we're doing, and then building a piece independently and sharing. So I have my kids often like, we'll write little bits and then we'll come together and even anonymously share them. And then, we all did this, right? There's a dictionary words activity, which I thought was really cool that I'm going to do tomorrow. So like physically ripping a piece of paper out of the dictionary and thinking of finding a word on the front or back of that could identify me. So like, when you ask kids to introduce themselves and you're like, tell a fact, and kids like never know what to say. It's always like, I play soccer. Maybe instead they could find a word on this dictionary page and be like, this word really, I feel like this word connected with me. So it's a little bit of a different idea to have them share something like that. I'm going to have us practice just a little bit with this about building a piece independently and sharing. So I'm going to ask us to write a one poem stanza. So maybe a couple lines. We're going to use Tiralt's Inukshuk poem as our mentor text. So you can go back to your copy that you made. There's some options here. It doesn't have to be just this. So the idea of you could lift a line. So choosing a line that you really liked, and several people said lines that they liked, to use as your title or an important line in your stanza. Maybe take one of her symbols or her images, like that guy who's down on the beach picking up rocks, and that could be the starting place for your stanza. Or writing a stanza trying to capture her tone or her theme in a different way. So I'm just going to give us maybe a minute or two just to jot something down. Maybe the first thing that comes to our mind, maybe just jotting something down real quickly and kind of in response to the poem that we read would be awesome. I'm not going to take the whole 5 minutes. Maybe I'll just give us a couple here. So just taking a moment, writing something down that stood out to us, maybe writing a line or two to be like an original piece. Actually going to go ahead and pause us. I apologize. That was probably not enough time, but we're a little short on time for this session. So You guys can go ahead and click on the shared doc from your version. And what I've done here is something I often do with my students, where we can take, and we can do this anonymously, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something I'm going to grade necessarily, but you can paste in your line or your stanza or something that you wrote. So I always take the first spot and I write my model there so they can see I'm doing it too. So I really liked the line, she's rising, not sinking. So, and I kind of copied some of her structure there. I loved that she, wasn't using capital letters, was kind of playing with punctuation. So I decided to try that too. So you can write your line in and nobody will know that it's yours. It's just seeing another example. You can pick a random spot. Nobody ever likes to pick the spots at the top for some reason. It feels like you're putting yourself out there too much. So I always take the top one. Oh my gosh. Nice. Okay, I'm gonna go back, but I love seeing what you guys are writing. I apologize for time's sake. I'm gonna come back here real quick just to finish this up while you guys are finishing those, but I'm totally gonna go back and look at them later. I wanted us to share on our Jamboard too. Maybe we can go back and add some ideas, some more ideas for our students to build in different ways. So if anybody has good ideas, you can drop them in the chat and I can make sure they end up on the Jamboard, or you can add them to the Jamboard maybe in the couple minutes we have to transition. These were some statements to my students that I wanted to, like, again, have a clear idea of what I want my affirmations to be this year. Will kind of help build with those rocks. A quote from the guy who wrote that Edutopia article about igniting a sense of community and collaboration. And I like the idea that, like, we're doing it on day one, right? This is linked to a Twitter page about having a day one checklist. So again, like, having those clear ideas about what I want to accomplish. And then we're just finishing up here with the books that we have. So I really appreciate you guys contributing to that shared doc, because one thing I wanted to kind of end with was the idea that, like, it's not like if I was like, write a poem, like that sounds really challenging and like too much. But we can do hard things and we can all like do them and say, like, I did this, we had this shared experience and I didn't have to put myself out there, but like we all did that together. And I find that, like, whenever, even if we do it anonymously, that we can like build a sense of community and say, like, other people around me in this physical space were doing it too. And that makes me feel like I can, open up, or I can contribute to this community. I am a contributor. So I think that that's helpful. So we'll go ahead and end because I think I'm already a minute over on time.
Wait a second, Jamie, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for helping us pause for a moment with all the hurriedness of this week to actually think about students and think about the rocks that they will be carrying when they come into school, and how we can actually combine that social emotional learning with the cognitive thinking, because when we do that, we really help kids excel, as well as engage, and also give them that room to maybe release and to share some of the rocks that they're carrying. So I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it. I know it's 8 o'clock this week is early. Okay, have a great day. Stop. Hold on.